Hello and welcome to episode 32 of Calder's Calling, the Calder Times flagship podcast, and your premier podcast destination for everything surrounding the American Hockey League. My name is Jay Foster. I am one of your hosts today. I'm joined by Corey Swart and Deana Weinheimer. We got the whole gang. Today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about Game 7 of Hershey versus Cleveland. Not too long, because the scheduling means that is already old news, but I wanted to touch on it a little bit, so we're going to do that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Coachella Valley and Hershey and how that series is turning out. And we're also going to talk a little bit about a couple of the transactions that are happening in the NHL that have kind of filtered down to the AHL as well. I know Corey wants to have some feelings about a couple of things, so we'll get into all of that. Before we kick things off, if you're not already subscribed to us on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube, go ahead and do that now. If you're currently watching on YouTube, hello, enjoy the live show. Please feel free to like, share, leave a comment, ask us a question if you have one. And if you hit the little bell button that's just below this screen, you can subscribe to us. So what that means is you'll get notifications every time we post a new episode, so you don't have to go looking for it, which is great. I'd also like to thank our show sponsor, Document Doctors. While not on the ice, they can help you and your business optimize and increase your revenue and profits to a bigger slice. Check out documentdoctorsllc.com and don't forget to mention that the Calder Times sent you to them. So we're going to kick this off here with Deana flipping the script on us a little bit, but instead of doing 3 stars of the week, we're going to go ahead and do our 3 enemies of the week. So I'm going to make Deana go first because this was her idea, and I know that she already has hers picked out. So Deana, who's your enemy of the week?
So if you're just now joining us, hello. And in case you don't know, I'm here at the Calder Times. I am the beat writer for the Cleveland Monsters, hence the background image. So it's probably no surprise to any of you that my enemy of the week, my anti 3 stars of the week, happens to be Garrett Rowe of the Hershey Bears. Corey's mildly celebrating down there. Just because he scored the overtime game winner in Game 7 to send the Monsters back to Cleveland empty-handed and sad, which made me sad. But I'm giving an honorable mention to this stupid, ridiculous heat because right now it's a feel-like temperature in Central Ohio of 104 degrees Celsius. Or Celsius, oh my God, we'd be dead.
104 degrees Celsius. So many degrees. Yeah.
104 degrees Fahrenheit. Wow. Yeah, it's going to be one of those shows, but yeah, and I know that's not going to make the ice good in Hershey. I know they were talking a little bit about the puck bouncing all over the place, and so the Heat is my honorable mention enemy of the week.
Corey, do you have an enemy of the week?
I had a hard time narrowing one down, but I'm going to just go topical and go more recent. And my enemy is Max McCormick, because he scored a hat trick in Game 2 last night and crushed all my hopes and dreams. But speaking of heat, I think the heat is worse out in Coachella Valley. I heard it's a balmy 110 degrees Fahrenheit out there, or it's at least projected to be, if I saw correctly. So lots of heat out there, but yeah, so they kind of, Max McCormick was in large part responsible for the 6-2 decision in Game 3 of the Calder Cup Finals last night. I'm still a little bit bitter about it, but hey, it's only Game 3, so that's the good news. So it's still quite close. But other honorable mention goes to Connor Carrick for seemingly trying to injure everybody that I hold dear. He nearly knocked Alex Limoges out of the game last night with a cross-check behind the net on a vulnerable spot, one of his legs, I believe. And, thankfully, Alex Limoges is a tough guy, so he ended up coming back. But I bet you didn't expect me to do this, but I still picked a former Hershey Bear, even for my enemies list. So that's
so out of character for you.
It's very out of character. So, or exactly what you were expecting, possibly, too. So yeah, that's kind of where my honorable mention goes there. Deana, I believe you are on mute.
Yeah. I'm just saying you have a very, very specific brand, and I love that no matter how we try to spin this, you stick with it.
I'll always think of
during the off season, we've got to try and think of like our 3 somethings of the week that Corey can't pick a bear for.
our 3 non-Hershey bears that have no
Yeah.
affiliation whatsoever. The original.
Or like pick our 3, like who's your favorite Brandon or something, or a name that has never played for the Bears, kind of in a similar vein where there has never been an Evan on the Stanley Cup, apparently, but there's an Evan on both Florida and Edmonton at the minute, so there will finally be a player named Evan on the Stanley Cup, which is very, very funny to me.
I was 40 years
That's
old when I
hilarious.
learned that.
Yeah.
That is hilarious. I did not know that either.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. My enemy of the week is Corey. No.
No.
What did I do?
My enemy of the week is Hunter Shepard for being so dang good at hockey and making my life miserable, personally. Again, it's extremely biased. Honorable mention to whatever is happening in San Jose that is making all of the veteran players leave the Barracuda. Because it keeps happening, and it's happening. It happened last summer. It's happening this summer, and it's stressing me out. So honorable mention to whatever is happening over in San Jose. I guess they don't like the weather or the chill atmosphere or the beach. I don't know, but that's my honorable mention of enemy of the week. Deana, have you emotionally recovered from the Game 7 loss yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Luckily, okay, so a person that used to be on the Cleveland beat that I've gotten to be good friends with and all that, he had his wedding this past weekend. So I was able to go there, sat at a table with a whole bunch of amazing Monsters fans. If any of you are watching, hello. And it was nice. We were all able to kind of talk it out over good food and cake and get our aggravations out through silly photo booth pictures with lots of props. And yeah, so it was a really good time. But yeah, a super heartbreaking loss for the Cleveland Monsters last week. If you want to see my reaction in real time, including me getting very emotional because of head coach Trent Vogelhuber's final press conference, post-game press conference, you can check our last live episode. But yeah, just sad, but also no one expected them to go this far this season. So it was all, once they got to the playoffs, it was all extra cherries and sprinkles on top.
Yeah, they were really playing with house money this season, I feel like. Sucks, but it happened. Corey, how do you kind of feel that, obviously, you know, we talked, I think, after game 5 or it was either game 5 or game 6, we talked immediately after, and we talked a little bit about how frustrated you were with how the Hershey Bears played in games 4, 5, possibly 6. Again, I don't remember how time works. But how do you feel about the series as a whole, looking back, you know, knowing that they went up 3-0 and then the Monsters kind of forced their way back into it, and then the Bears kind of were victorious right at the very end by, you know, a single overtime goal?
It was fitting that it went to overtime in game 7 because why not? I mean, we've had so many overtime games in the series. All 4 of those were coming at Giant Center too, which was extra stress. I started to get used to not leaving Giant Center on time as you normally expect to. But yeah, no, I think it was a really great test for the Bears. I mean, these are 2 teams that in my mind were very similar in terms of, you know, being very attention to detail, very oriented with you know, how they play their styles, and, you know, give Cleveland a lot of credit. The Bears went up 3-0. I don't know that they, you know, obviously came out on the right end of 2 overtime decisions to start the series. You know, Cleveland's a hard team to play against. They're very heavy. You know, the toll on the Bears in terms of injuries is, you know, still affecting them. You know, even in this current series that they're playing, they're missing, you know, Lucas Johansson got injured, Vincent Iorio, Aaron Ness, that's 3 top defenders, and the Bears are kind of feeling the repercussions of that, and the consequences of not being able to finish the job sooner in any stretch too. So, I think it was a great test for the Bears. I would say that was probably their hardest, the hardest they've had to dig in that I've seen in quite some time. So, I give the Monsters a ton of credit. I think it was a really good series. And of course, it came down to 1 goal. And, the Bears have been there before. I don't know if that, affected anything there necessarily. But when Game 7 was going on, I can tell you from my seat, the Bears were starting up a rush. And I said, I need a Garrett Rowe overtime winner right now. And sure enough, they went down the ice and found it. So it was kind of a bizarre, holy cow, Corey was right kind of situation for some reason. But, it's one of those things. It's a massive test. And, I don't think Coachella Valley had the same test. Sorry to the Milwaukee Admirals fans out there, but it wasn't quite the same depth test for them. And, to me, it deserved its own championship trophy just because of how tough that series was.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of fun, a lot of stress, a lot of really genuinely excellent hockey.
Yep.
We've been really lucky this postseason, I feel like, with the hockey that we've seen. I feel like there's been a lot of really good series. There's been a lot of really good games, a lot of surprises. It's fun.
Yeah.
What was it? How was it you said, Corey? AHL hockey woo? Or AHL hockey yay? Yay AHL hockey, what was it? I don't remember. Or yay AHL playoffs. Something like that, but that's how I feel. I want to talk a little bit we'll talk about the series that's currently ongoing in a minute. But before we kind of get into that, because I think that's going to be the bulk of our episode. Big NHL trade today between the Washington Capitals and the LA Kings that is going to have some ramifications for the Hershey Bears next season. So, Corey, do you want to talk a little bit about how the Capitals have decided to make your life difficult in a completely new way right now?
Absolutely. So I do want to follow this up with an anecdote that I saw this coming. Not exactly to this one, but I want to, make sure I mention that. But the Washington Capitals have traded goaltender Darcy Kemper to the Los Angeles Kings for Pierre-Luc Dubois. It is a 1-for-1 player swap, meaning there's no draft picks, anything extra kind of, coming out of this trade. It is all just those 2 players. The Capitals take on a bit of a hefty cap hit for quite some time as a result of this hit. Dubois is a center. He is 25 years of age. It's an $8.5 million cap hit, which is just lots and lots and lots of money. They have the space for it by, offloading Kemper, who also makes a good amount of money, not quite that much money, but the result of that, the underlying results of this are twofold, because the Capitals will now be at least projected to start with a tandem of Charlie Lindgren and Hunter Shepard, or Clay Stevenson, depending on who wins that job outright at camp. Can't rule out the possibility. This is June 19th. So there is a strong possibility of free agency still all the way ahead of us here. The Capitals could go with a cheap option and just throw all of our expectations on its head. It's not the first time they've done it. But it also adds to their center depth at the NHL level, which is something that they haven't really had a lot of. Hendrix Lapierre is a guy pushing for a spot. Connor McMichael is a restricted free agent. He needs a new contract. They still have guys like Dylan Strome as well as Nick Dowd on contract. So it'll be interesting to see how that situation unfolds for the Caps. But, they add a center, they lose a goaltender. Projection is that one of these guys from Hershey, Shepard, I think is more deserving just for his time served and a litany of accomplishments deserves it. But the one thing I wanted to say, I mentioned at the beginning here, is that I predicted this. So now that both the South Carolina Stingrays and the Washington Capitals have been done with their seasons for some time, the Bears have 3 goaltenders currently with them, the third goaltender being one Mitch Gibson. And I was intrigued by this possibility quite some time ago because he was wearing a special custom Hershey Bears mask he did not have for much of that season. And the same thing kind of happened with Clay Stevenson last year, where he had this beautiful, custom, well-done Bears mask where I said, might he be promoted next season while, questioning things and, all that. So the same thing happened with Gibson. I'm like, what are the odds that the Capitals make space for somebody to move up while, somehow allowing Gibson to kind of take that next step? And he's been pretty good. So it's kind of an interesting trade. My prediction, all not completely what happened, ended up, sort of holding weight in the long term, possibly. So we'll see how it unfolds over the summer.
Yeah, could be a new look tandem for the Hershey Bears this October. And I guess bringing in Dubois as well, you mentioned it a little bit there, that will probably, in theory anyway, reduce the number of players getting called up from Hershey in terms of center, because I feel like they kind of were in the same position as the Monsters and the Blue Jackets were kind of at the tail end of the season, which is everyone in Washington was dead, and then they called a bunch of them up to be Black Aces for the 3.5 playoff games that they played. So having that kind of an extra body up front, I think will probably help out the Hershey Bears in terms of being able to keep their guys in Hershey just a little bit longer. I want to talk now about, and we are, I understand that we are an AHL podcast. I want to talk about one more kind of other NHL thing that is going to kind of have ramifications on the AHL potentially, which is the Columbus Blue Jackets need a new head coach, and there's a lot of names floating out around there. A couple of AHL coaches specifically, or one AHL coach, and then there's a couple of other options that Deana and I discussed on yesterday's episode of Locked on Blue Jackets, in fact, where we talked about Trent Vogelhuber potentially getting the call. We talked about Marco Sturm potentially getting the call, head coach of the Ontario Reign right now. And apparently Todd Nelson also in the mix, in the conversation to potentially be the head coach up in Columbus. A lot of names in the mix. No one, it's very, very early on in the process, but how do we feel about Todd Nelson as a potential name being in the mix here?
If you were watching my nonverbals while you're reading those names, that's all you need to know.
Tina going eyes wide at the concept of Trent Vogelhuber leaving Cleveland.
Like Trent Vogelhuber, nope, not yet. Again, listen to that Locked on Blue Jackets podcast for my full train of thought. Marco Sturm, yes, please. Todd Nelson, injected in my veins, double, triple, quadruple, yes, please. As much as that, I know is not going to make Corey or Bears fans happy, but man, it seems like a perfect fit. Like, he's such an amazing coach, gets the best out of his players. They really need a good development coach in there right now. That's not going to, hey, we have these young guys, we have call-ups, let's just stick them on the fourth line and play them 2 minutes a night. No, they need a coach that can do that. I'm tired of the coaching carousel. Please, let's do like what they just did in San Jose, making Ryan Warsofsky the head coach out there. Come on, let's Marco Sturm or Todd Nelson or bust.
Yeah, I want to talk about your feelings about Todd Nelson specifically, Corey, because obviously you're pretty familiar with the dude. Is there infrastructure in Hershey for him to be replaced easily, or is that like, obviously it's those are big shoes to fill in Hershey, obviously, but how is the coaching infrastructure there? Have they got a guy that you think is ready to kind of maybe step up, or would this turn into oh God, we need to now find a whole new system in Hershey?
Well, my first thought about it is you can't have him. That's what I'm gonna start with that. You can't have him. He's
okay. I will let Don Waddell know that
we have him on speed dial.
I'm throwing the proverbial blanket over him to say you don't see anything. Nothing's here. Keep
pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Yeah,
keep looking. You have Trent Vogelhuber. Use him.
No, not yet. No, in like 3 years.
Todd Nelson head coach, Trent Vogelhuber assistant coach. Let's go.
That would be
yes.
That'd be the plottiest of plot twists. Yeah. Honestly,
I would love that, but no, keep Trent down in the AHL for now.
I agree.
But no, for Hershey, it is an interesting thing because we've kind of had this not looming sense, but anytime you win a Calder Cup, and now are back in the finals next year, 2 deep playoff runs in a row, you do have to wonder, this guy's got to be at the top of the list for potential candidates for jobs. I know the question was brought to him at one point during the playoffs, and this is obviously several carousels ago, in terms of spots there. And he said he wasn't talking to anybody. So, I don't know how the man could find time to coach this team as well as, accept phone calls. It seems like, that's a tall order, but I do think the Bears have good candidates in here. The first person that comes to mind internally would be Nick Bootland, who, has been a head coach at the ECHL level before. He would still have Patrick Weller along with him, as he's, been in Hershey for quite a few years now. The one thing that I do like about Bootland is that he is a very hard-nosed guy. He also gets the most from his guys. Very tough, but he's kind of been the mouthpiece for Nelson in the sense that, he gets, really animated. He's really, he's kind of like the hounds that you want to sick on someone. Like, if Todd Nelson is the Simpsons, the Simpsons character, why can't I think of the Simpsons right off the top of my head here? But Nick Bootland is the hounds that Smithers releases, basically. He will do the yelling, he will do the loud, preaching type of thing. And, it's possible that he's better in that role type of thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears might look externally in that case while keeping this staff. But, it's Todd Nelson. He's an impossible person to just replace one for one, I think. And in many ways, the Bears were extremely fortunate to have him along for, as long as they have so far. So, like I said, if blankets thrown, you don't see anything here, you can't have him.
That's the tough thing about the AHL, like covering the AHL specifically, is that you want good things for your guys and you want them to get everything that they deserve. You want them to find success. But unfortunately, a lot of times finding that success means leaving us and never coming back. It's the same thing with Trent Oglehuber. I would be overjoyed if he became a successful NHL head coach. And I think he's got it in him somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
But also don't leave us. Whenever a player gets called up and, is gone forever, not forever, but for me specifically, like William Eklund was on the Barracuda last season, made the Sharks out of training camp this season and never looked back. And now I'm like, man, I'm glad that he's having huge success with the Sharks organization in the NHL, but also I miss him on the Barracuda. So it's a tough situation to be in because the things that you love are inevitably going to leave you, and that kind of sucks. But that's hockey. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get into kind of the meat of this episode, which is how the series between Coachella Valley and Hershey has been shaping up so far. So we're going to do that in a second, but before we do that, I want to share a little bit more about one of our sponsors today, Document Doctors, or I guess our only sponsor today, but Document Doctors. Is your business growing beyond the four walls of your office? As businesses grow, so do the challenges of keeping people trained, safe, and supportive. Document Doctors is a proud sponsor of the Calder's Calling podcast and the Calder Times, and they offer affordable solutions to help optimize your business and keep up the good times rolling. They offer content-focused solutions such as training, document creation, back office process optimization, policy and procedure development, and much, much more. Support the podcast and support the Calder Times by visiting them at documentdoctorsllc.com. Don't forget to mention us when talking to their team of contentologists. Once again, that is documentdoctorsllc.com. Shop and support small businesses today. So, Coachella Valley is, as of last night, so Tuesday night, up 2-1 in the series. They traded games in Hershey at the Giant Center. Game 4 is tomorrow, Thursday, or tonight if you're listening to this, the VOD on audio afterwards. Corey, how are we feeling after game 3?
Not great. Lots of questions the Bears had to answer. It was, unfortunately, it was kind of crazy from puck drop, essentially, because it was insanity. I mean, it was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen to start a game, where the Bears got penalized 30 seconds into the game for an illegal starting lineup, which I can't say I've ever seen before. So basically just from looking at the lineup, it looks like they submitted an old copy of what the Bears' fourth line was at one point, which was Matt Strome, Riley Sutter, and Henrik Rubinski. Now, of course, since game 2, that was how it was in game 1. In game 2, the Bears swapped things around, and now Henrik Rubinski is centering the third line in the absence of Garrett Rowe. So whoever submitted, I believe, this is just what I noticed, was that, it appears they sent an old lineup card and used what they currently have, which was, everything else was correct and submitted in that respect in terms of that. But they announced it as this fourth line. They didn't have the players on there. The Firebirds noticed the Bears are shorthanded and give up a strange goal right off the bat there with a shot that, was caught up in Shepard and kind of sat behind him. Nobody picked it up, and the Firebirds tuck it in. And it was kind of just a roller coaster as a result of that. It really took the Bears, scoring with Henrik Rubinski to kind of, quell the momentum. And it was just kind of a mess just from, the start of the game. Deana, I can tell you have some thoughts to share.
Yeah, Deana, am I insane, or did this happen to the Monsters this season?
It did.
Okay,
on December 30th, 2023, while in Illinois, facing the Chicago Wolves. With 16:39 remaining in the first period, play was stopped. The refs went over to talk to Trent Vogelhuber and assistant coach Mike Haviland because Roman Ashawn did not make the opening lineup, but he was on the ice. I believe they put down Tyler Angle, I think, but Tyler Angle was unavailable, but he was on the official lineup, so they had to end up playing a player down the rest of the night because Roman Ashawn was not on the official lineup. So it has happened, and it happened to the Monsters. So there you go.
It is not unprecedented.
No, but it is insane that how many people do you think look at these lineup sheets before they get to the officials? Like,
apparently,
and it still somehow slipped through the gaps.
Apparently too few.
Yeah. So, Deana, have you had a chance to catch much of the? I know that they're in the West Coast now, and that is kind of difficult for you guys out there on the East Coast. Did you catch much of Game 1 and 2 for Hershey and Coachella Valley? What are your kind of outside thoughts on this matchup?
I hope
do not seem to like each other very much, which is very funny to me.
I hope no one from my work is watching, but I binge watched them today at work. While I'm going to have
a joke. If anyone from Deana's work is watching for legal reasons, this is a joke. She was doing capitalism all day.
I did get all of my stuff done. I actually completed some things early while I was listening, so it all worked out. So yay me, yay AHL TV. But yeah, I literally, because I haven't had a chance to watch them because 10 a.m. start, or I wish it was a 10 a.m. start, 10 p.m. starts just do not work well with my sleep schedule. Hence why at one point, Corey and I were rooting for Grand Rapids to get to this point because it's the same time zone. So that would have been great. Honestly, this has just been a really interesting series from an outside perspective because especially starting in like game 1 and then you started mainly game 1, you could really see the heavy legs on Hershey's side because they had not even 48 hours in between games. Meanwhile, the Firebirds were already there. They had time to sit down, watch Hershey live play, against Cleveland as they closed out that series. And they had time to rest and practice. But then in game 2, you could see that Hershey was a little bit fresher in that game. And then you could also see, all right, maybe the lack of game action was starting to wear on the Firebirds a little bit because you can I know it's a cliche, but you can't replace game action in practice. So it has been a real big series of ebbs and flows. One thing I did notice that Hershey, as always, are relentlessly tough to get out of their offensive zone. Game 1 especially, but one thing that I've noticed from Coachella Valley is that their passing is so flawless at times. It's super crisp and is just incredibly flawless. There was one that was a tic-tac goal and in game 1, and I was just beyond shocked. And we do have someone coming in. Jamison, he was with us last week for most of the live Game 7 watch party saying, I miss Cleveland. Jamison, me too. I think Jay will co-sign that. But yeah, it's just...
Don't anti-sign that.
This is why you're my enemy, Corey.
But yeah, overall, Coachella has just been super smooth and cool, much like the ice, unlike the weather outside. But yeah, I mean, honestly, my keys, I know you haven't asked about keys moving forward, but if I had keys moving forward, it's Hershey needs to, and I'm not meaning to make this pun, but it's the word I'm going to use. They really need to bear down when it comes to keeping Coachella hemmed in their defensive zone, because all playoffs long, they have had serious issues clearing the puck. So that's a strength of Hershey. They just need to really focus on that and try to rest a little bit and get back at it. But whenever you guys are ready, I do have an incredible clip lined up involving some massive hitting.
Show us the clip, because I haven't seen this and I think it's going to be extremely funny.
Okay. Talk for a few seconds while I get this queued up here.
Okay, Corey, knee-jerk reaction. Who has impressed you the most from Coachella Valley?
I guess I can't really go with anybody other than Ryan Winterton. I mean, this is a guy that hasn't, done a lot of scoring here, but he's got like 3 goals in 3 games so far. What impresses me most about Coachella Valley is there's some times where, they, it's not just one guy really. I mean, you can look at, the goal that Shane Wright scored in game 3 and say like, oh man, one individual, Connor McDavid-esque kind of moment. But, I've liked what I've seen from them in terms of like, they all move together. Like it's almost like how the Flying V was in the old Mighty Ducks movies, where it's just these guys and they fly over the line. And, you can see how they've just dominated in the playoffs so far, because they fly in over the line and push everybody back. And, it's tic-tac-toe. How can they burn you on this rush? I mean, it's fitting that their name is the Firebirds, because they can burn you on the rush so intensely. There's a couple of times where I'm like, well, this isn't good. This is a lot of speed they're coming with. And then they'll, find a way to score a goal and make me sad. So I've been impressed with, just their creativity off there. It's a different kind of team than how, the series with Cleveland was, where it was a lot of, grinding, physical play. I think that's kind of been an adjustment factor for Hershey, has been, shifting their mindset to defending this rush. And I do want to talk about injuries at some point for the Bears, with just the litany of guys that they're missing right now. But I do want to get back to Deana's clip before we get too far along with that.
So I'm going to give this my award for most chaotic / most amazing sequence of the postseason thus far, which I know we're almost out of it, but okay. Just sit back, enjoy this sequence here, which involves a couple of amazing hits and a goal. All right. Here it comes.
Sometimes everyone forgets how to play hockey at exactly the same time is the thing, and that I feel is a really good example of that.
I'm sorry, but it was so funny. It was just the boom on Dubé. Then Jimmy Huntington comes in, boom. And it's so funny whenever so that was the Coachella Valley Firebirds call. I really enjoyed listening to their call over these 3 games when I binge watched them today. But it was so funny whenever their player hit Dubé, it wasn't that was uncalled, but it was the exact same hit on their guy. And all of a sudden that hit was uncalled. Make it make sense. It was the exact same hit almost. But yeah, that was just my shout out. I thoroughly enjoyed that sequence.
Listen, everybody's got to have their homer moments on their broadcast. As much as people say they don't like Jack Edwards, people sometimes would prefer their announcers to sound as he does at times. Nobody else is Boston Bruins fans.
So I have kind of a fun fact for y'all if you are
Please.
into
I love
odd. Okay. So do you all know who the first player to ever sign a contract with the Seattle Kraken was? Back on May 12th, 2021?
I should know this because it was somebody like you wouldn't expect to be the contract. Like it was a college kid or something like that. A youngster. Oh, that's going to bug me.
This player scored the first goal for the Firebirds in game 2 on their way to a 5-2 loss. But anyway, he scored a goal. Luke Henman was that player. I just thought it was interesting. So there you go. He currently, this is his third season with the Coachella Valley Firebirds, and he has 4 points this playoff through 11 games. So
good for him, honestly. I like it, because I believe the first player that signed for Vegas was a guy called Reed Duke, and he is now in the KHL, I believe. So good for Hedman for sticking around and making the almost the big club, the baby big club, so to speak.
And Ed got it right. He's tuning in on Facebook.
Hey, 10 points for Ed.
Yeah. If we were keeping track, Ed would probably have the lead here. And Ed, I'm sorry I didn't see. I agree. It can't be his third season, but it definitely is. I just looked at the AHL.com. Yeah, he had 50 games with the Charlotte Checkers in 2021-22, 67 games last season with the Firebirds, and 45 games this season. Already in his young career, 26 postseason games.
Impressive.
We talked a little bit about who impressed you with the Firebirds, Corey. Who's been the standout for you for Hershey so far?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I'll give it to Hardy Hamanoktel, I think, for this one. And I wanted to circle back to talk about injuries a little bit, and this is going to be my segue to talk about it a little bit. Hershey's absolutely beleaguered with injuries. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit with a little bit earlier. They're missing 3 regulars. That's like half of your defensive lineup. All got injured during the Cleveland series in, Johansson, Ness, as well as Vinny Iorio. And it's a real shame for those guys, but the Bears have been depth tested all season long. And I really think that all of that has caused Hardy Hamanoktel to take a step forward. And this is a guy that scored all of 2 goals, I believe, during the regular season for the Bears, which, fun fact, he scored Hershey's very first goal of the season, which ironically came against the Cleveland Monsters. So it was kind of an odd, little plot twist there from way back in game number 2. But he's been a guy that's stepped up. He's on basically the Bears' top defenseman at this point, paired with, I believe, Dylan McElrath. He has 5 goals in the playoffs now. He has, I believe, 2 goals in his last 3 games. Before last night, where nobody had any fun scoring goals, seemingly. He's been really good. And when you're missing 3 guys like that, the Bears have had to rely on guys like Logan Day, Jake Massey, as well as Dmitry Osipov, 3 guys that were not everyday players for the Bears over the course of the regular season, but played. They all had their significant roles in keeping Hershey as good as they were. So I find it kind of an interesting debate here in terms of top Hershey guys. Now, after a 6-2 loss like they had, it's kind of hard to pick stars, but I've loved watching how Hardy Hamanoktel has grown as, a first-year AHL player. I can't say first-year pro because he played pro in, the highest level in Sweden prior to this. But, he's a guy that I think is really molding his game, really adding elements to it. He's got all the tools that you'd want to see a sizable, smooth skating defenseman. I wouldn't be surprised if he piques the interest of the Washington Capitals, perhaps even as early as an audition in the fall.
Deana, same question. Although I guess since you're kind of a neutral party, I asked Corey who was impressing him on Coachella Valley. Who's impressing you on Coachella Valley? Who's impressing you on Hershey?
That is a very, very good question. For Coachella Valley, I really like how Shane Wright has started this series. So he was out for...
He was my selection for Coachella Valley. So
yeah, I mean, okay. So if I had to go with somebody else...
No, you can pick him. That's fine. I'm just saying that we agree on enjoying Shane Wright.
Yeah. I mean, other than him, let's talk about someone we have not talked about yet. Marian Studenich.
Mm-hmm.
He's been one of those players that just has been in the right place at the right time. He's not exactly putting up points this series. He has one goal throughout this series, 1 point, but he is making a huge impact. And that one goal was a heck of a goal. Just overall, it seems like he's using the body. He's doing all those intangible things that, when it comes to this time of year, I know it's such a cliche and we hate saying this in the middle of like January, get pucks in deep, get pucks on net, blah, 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 blah. He's doing those things now. And it's the things that whenever you have a championship team, you need people to be doing, and he's doing them very well. So that would be my pick for Coachella Valley. For Hershey, kind of going back to what Corey said about the injuries, I need to even go in and double check to see who's even still here because it's been hard. Honestly, can we just give a stick tap to Matt Strome for his breakaway goal?
Yes, absolutely can.
Because that was, whenever you think of a guy that's going to rush out on, I don't know if it was actually a goal. I don't think it was a goal, but it was an attempt. And whenever you think of guys breaking away, you do not think of 6'4", 206-pound Matt Strome. But he did his best with it, and honestly, I'm just enjoying watching him play.
He's having a good time, I think, which is, it must be tough. And this is no disrespect to Matt Strome, but it must be tough being the brother that didn't make the NHL. Obviously Ryan Strome, Dylan Strome, both fairly accomplished NHL players. Matt Strome hasn't made it there yet. He still might, but it's got to be tough. Ed has a fun stat for us, though, which I want to share. The finals have had 9 full periods so far. The Bears have been held to 10 or fewer shots in every one of them. They had 10 shots on goal in period 1 of game 1, and since then, in every single period, they have had 9 or fewer shots on goal. The Firebirds said defense first, and everything else will work itself out, I think, and that seems to be working pretty well for them.
I did not know that. Oh, well, sure. That's a heck of a stat. Thanks.
I'm not surprised.
He says
Coachella
begrudgingly.
Valley is such a weird team because I feel like there's no one, and again, no disrespect, but there's no one on that team that I think is a significant game breaker in the way that Hunter Shepard is a game breaker, or Trey Fix-Volansky was a game breaker in the regular season, for example. But they are more than the sum of their parts in a way. And I think credit to Dan Bilesma and his coaching staff for that, because they've really built something here that is like I said, it's more than the sum of their parts. It feels very reminiscent of the John Tortorella era Columbus Blue Jackets, who, against all odds, decided to make the playoffs with Brandon Dubinsky as their number one center. No disrespect again to Brandon Dubinsky, who I love, but I get the same kind of feeling from the Firebirds, which is that's just a team that is going to make it so miserable for anyone else to play against. It just they don't stop, and it's very frustrating. That's very funny, Ed. Back in juniors, we referred to Keith Gretzky as the good one. My favorite Gretzky fun fact is that Wayne and Keith Gretzky hold the record for most points by a set of brothers in the NHL. Keith Gretzky has 4 points.
I love this.
So,
but going back to Matt Strom real quick, I feel like when we're talking about him, like he's me. He's here for the vibes and the good times. And
truly,
I think that's why I'm connecting so much with him right now.
Well, the thing about Matt Strom, there's a number of players that this applies to. Bogdan Chernayev and Henrik Grabinski are guys that immediately come to mind. These are all guys that were around last season but didn't see any action during the playoffs a season ago. They've all taken greater roles with this Bears team. And, all three of them are coincidentally the shutdown defensive guys up front for them alongside, Riley Sutter and, some of the guys exactly who you'd expect. But, kind of combining with that stat about the shots on goal, I think it's worth noting that, the Bears haven't, have had to rely on being opportunistic at times in this series, particularly in game 2, where they, the Bears at one point, I think, were being outshot 12-4, and they had 2 goals on 4 shots. It was just one of those ones where it was a, breakout rush, 2-on-1, Huntington to Dubé goal, as well as I'm trying to think of how the other goal played out off the top of my head. It's not coming back to me. But, the Bears were, basically opportunistic with both of their goals. And, I give Coachella Valley a lot of credit. They really adjusted and prevented the Bears from getting literally anything in the second half of game 3. It felt like it was a chore for the Bears to get the puck in and retrieve it, or, even get set up. There was one sequence that stands out to me because I was just about to tweet how good of a sequence it was. And then the Firebirds ruined it by scoring. Where the Bears, held the puck. It was typical Bears, exactly what they do, trying to wear the other team down in the second period. Doesn't quite work. It goes the other way. The Bears ice the puck. Coachella Valley holds it in and then scores right afterwards. Like, they have kind of taken what's been Hershey's strength and thrown it on its head. And I wonder, just kind of going back to the whole injury thing, the whole, where it's been and all this stuff, I just wonder if the Bears have that gas in the tank to really be able to turn this around. And, obviously you can say what you will. It's only a 2-1 series. The Bears are far from dead and buried by any stretch. But, just based on the way the game played out, it felt like one of the first 2 games of the final series from last year where the Bears were really just, blitzed in a lot of ways. And the Bears have to win one of these games on the road here in order to, return to the friendly confines of the Giant Center. Like, that's still on the table here. So I'm just a little bit worried. And, I'm very much hoping that the Bears will, will their way to a game 6 or game 7, where I think it's very much more on the table to try and turn this thing around. But both teams have kind of said they expect this to be a long series. So I don't expect the Bears to just roll over and allow this to happen in some ways too.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk a little bit about what needs to happen next moving forward for both teams, either for Coachella Valley to finish out the series or for the Bears to, mount a miniature comeback, I guess. But Deana, I believe you have one more player that you want to discuss before we do that.
Well, one thing I want to just kind of get on people's radar, though, is as I've been watching this series too, I need to bring up Leighton Road. So he is a rookie with the Coachella Valley Firebirds, actually just signed as a free agent with the Kraken back in March, made his playoff debut in game 2, and he is already making noise on the score sheet. Got his first goal at 4:06 of the second period in game 3, was actually the game-winning goal in a 6-2 win. He's the reigning, he is one of the reigning Hobie Baker Award nominees, Bemidji State. I'm getting the Denton Matejchuk vibes from Cleveland, where this kid comes in just making their debut and immediately benefiting the team. So Layton Road, keep an eye on him. A forward, 6'0", 179, 2002 birthday. Again, making me feel old because that's when I graduated from high school. So there we go.
There we go. Let's talk about going forward. We've talked about kind of what the Firebirds have done well, what the Bears have maybe done not so well. Big game 4 coming up, because a 3-1 series is very different to a 2-2 series. What do the Bears do to avoid getting into a 3-1 hole? And like we've seen in these playoffs so far, that going down 3-1 is not necessarily an indication of anything, but you got to imagine that they need to win the next one, because 3-1 is very close to 4-1. That's just basic math. How do the Bears, like, what do the Bears need to do in game 4 to avoid falling into that hole?
To really just step up across the board here. I mean, I think that it starts with getting off on the right foot and kind of ends with a full 60-minute effort. And it's not going to be easy, as the Firebirds are a team where you can only hold them off for so long, especially in their own building, where it's, the only way I could describe the atmosphere from what I saw on Tuesday was like it's a 24/7 party. And I believe that, all three of us can relate to this, but if you've been to a party and you don't have, your social battery may run out faster than everybody else's. But for the Bears, it's one of those things where you have to out party the party folks, right? Like you have to, do whatever it takes to have that energy. I think it starts with finding a quick goal and taking the lead and, really establishing that. It worked in game 2 where the Bears, they maybe didn't have, they had the lead, but they didn't, quite, it took them a little bit to get to that point. I think this is one where you just have to assert yourself early and often and discourage the Firebirds. Because as we saw on Tuesday, if you give them anything to be happy about, they will, take that and run a mile with it, unfortunately. And the Bears got run out of the building as a result of that. So I think it just kind of starts in playing a complete game, taking advantage early and just kind of, letting the rest play out. But, to the point about stats with shots, it starts with getting shots, getting quality chances, making Chris Drieger work for it, which I don't think he's had to do so far in this series. The Bears have found ways to beat him, but it's been a challenge. So I do think it just starts with tilting the ice, and it's got to happen early. No more lineup penalties. I don't want to see any of that stupid, silly stuff happen ever again.
No more crime.
As a former criminal myself, no more crime.
Reformed criminal Corey says, no more.
No more of this.
How did you know that my key to success, or one of my keys to success for the Hershey Bears, was going to be submit the proper lineup?
Because it's literally one that everybody should know
you're
about.
Already fighting a downhill battle. The unforced error of it all is so stupid. Let's talk about the flip side of that, Deana.
Yes.
Coachella Valley has a chance to go up 3-1 in the series. What's the best way for them to do that? Just kind of keep doing what they're doing? How do they avoid what happened in game 2 from happening again?
Trust themselves. Trust the coach. Corey, do not make fun of me at putting the Disney spin on this, because it is so absolutely true. I mean, Ed, who has been super amazing in the comments here, he brought this up about 10 minutes ago, saying that the team is bought in to total team defense. Bylsma gets the credit. Listen to your coaching staff. They are so smart. You have really, really great veterans on this team. Even without Andrew Podorowski, who's been out since, when did he? Yeah, not even 6 minutes into the first game, gets taken out by Dylan McElrath. I have some thoughts there, but anyway, he was a thorn in Cleveland's side, not just a small thorn. We're talking.
No,
large.
he was and again, we mean this in the most complimentary way possible. What a pain in the butt to play against.
Yes. They just need to keep doing what they're doing and do not let the moment get too big for them. I know totally cliche, but it is so easy. And it almost actually bit them. What was that game? Game two? Yeah, game one. Sorry, when there was just that huge rash of Hershey penalties. There was so listen to this. These are all Hershey penalties in the third period at 7:37, 10:02, 12:17, 14:16. Coachella Valley did not score in the third period. They were very content to just kind of play an easy, or they appear to be pretty content in just playing super easy, super steady. Like, hey, we've got a 2-goal lead. We don't want to exhaust ourselves right off the bat. And then Hendrix LaPierre scores at 18:04 to make it 4-3, made it a game. So just listen to your coaching staff. Maybe don't settle in that comfortably. Play with a little bit of grit, and they should be okay.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun. I have faith in the Bears. If not maybe winning this series, but they've proven that they can finish series out before. They've proven that they're. What did Tony Brown say? I didn't hear no bell.
I didn't hear no bell.
Yeah, I didn't hear no bell. It feels all very melodramatic to be like, man, how is Hershey going to avoid losing this series? It's 3 games in. It's 2-1. It's fine. But
at this point last year, it was also 2-1 in Coachella Valley's favor. So Coachella won games 1 and 2, 5-0, 4-0. Remember that stress, Corey?
That was indeed stress.
Game 3, Hershey took it 5-4 in OT. Hershey then won 3-2, 1-0 in overtime. It goes back to Acrisure Arena for the 2 final games. Coachella Valley just throttles the Bears again, 5-2. Then Hershey Bears win in overtime, 3-2 OT. So these are not situations that these teams have not, that they're not unfamiliar with. So if any team can come back, history shows us it's the Bears, but can they do it without Aaron Ness and
Sid's next man up mentality? It's got to be.
Yep, it has to be.
The Bears are deep enough that they've been making it work so far. So knee-jerk reaction. Let's finish up here. Who wins tomorrow? And what is the final score? And for a bonus point, who scores the game winner?
Oh God.
I love making people do this without any thinking time.
Corey, who all is definitely out right now? So, because didn't somebody go down in game 3?
Alex Limoges went down but returned to the game, I believe.
Yeah, he did go down, but he did return. Yes.
Okay.
So the Bears are without Garrett Rowe, Aaron Ness, Lucas Johansson, and Vincent Iorio, and only Aaron Ness, I believe, is the only player who has a potential to come back.
Ooh.
Like he is listed as day-to-day, I believe. That's not even the entirety of Hershey's scratches. Like they're missing some other players who are also injured, like John McDonald, who is a depth player from South Carolina, who somehow got injured in practice and his arm's been in a sling.
No.
Oh, that's rough.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
And Ed, I do see your question in there. We'll close with that. If you have any last minute questions, please type them in the box or tweet us at the Calder Times. If Aaron Ness comes back, I'm putting an asterisk on my prediction. I say this one, we need an overtime.
No, we don't.
An overtime on the West Coast? On a school night?
No, we don't.
Yes. Chaos. Let's go. 3-2 overtime. Hershey deflection off of. I'm going to make this as chaotic as I can possibly get because, again, I'm here for the vibes. Deflection off of Riker Evans by Chase Brisky.
And it turns into like a 20-minute review as they try to decide if it was kicked in or not. I like Ed's prediction here that I'll read out real quickly. Firebirds win 4-2. Empty net goal scored by John Hayden, and he's going to bet us 5 matchsticks.
I mean, I'm here for the John Hayden goal. One of our photography editors and has turned recent writer, Karen McLean. She is a big John Hayden fan, so she would appreciate
He's pretty great.
that.
I
just look for the most odd thing.
I was supposed to say Deana kind of stole where I was going with this one, but I'm going to say 5-3 Hershey win. It's going to be hairy at times, where I think it's going to come down to an empty net goal on a too stressful for me kind of push towards the end there, where I'm going to say that Hendrix Lapierre is going to score the game winner for the Bears here. So far, the Bears have gotten some really good looks from him. They're between him and Joe Snively and Ethan Frank, it's an all-speed line. They're incredibly quick. Definitely the most impactful and noticeable players, in my opinion, from Game 3. I think they're going to get it. I think they're going to get some good chances. It's going to be a goal-scoring spree, as it tends to be in Coachella Valley.
I'm going to go full chaos. I'm going to go with a 1-0 Bears win.
Oh.
And I'm going to go with, I'm going full energy of the Monsters in Game 1 versus Syracuse. Bogdan Trineyev, shorthanded, third period game winner. Bears win 1-0.
Yes.
Ed is calling us out in the comments here. He hasn't forgotten our predictions from the Coachella Valley and Ontario Rain series. I feel like in our defense, Eric Portillo was being God. Listen, if you don't, predictions are fun. I almost never mean my predictions. I love to go for chaos. And I love to go for, if it's right, I'll sound like I know the future. And if it's wrong, it was a crazy prediction. I can't lose.
In my full defense, I spend way too much time watching the North Division because I'm the only correspondent right now from this season, the only correspondent in the North Division. So that was all my free time.
That's fair.
So I know nothing. No, I do. But
I think that's kind of all we've got for today.
We have one final question though.
From
Ed.
Please. Oh,
yes. Because Ed has been fantastic. I appreciate you in the comments. Jameson, thank you earlier for chiming in. But Ed wants to know, is Dylan McElrath as disliked as much in the East as he is detested by Coachella Valley fans? I think Corey will probably read that as a good thing. Because
he's one of those players, not to speak over you, Corey, but he's one of those players that if he's on your team, you love him. If you're playing against him, he's Satan.
You beat me to it, Jay. Honestly, that was exactly what I was going to say. Because speaking as somebody that did not always have him on my team, I hated Dylan McElrath back in 2015 when he was a member of the Hartford Wolfpack team that beat the Bears in the second round of the Calder Cup playoffs that season. Where he was one of those guys where you were like, you thought to yourself, this guy's out to hurt every single one of my team's players. He is, this dirtbag type of thing. Like, you get real worked up about it anytime he's on the ice. And he has that effect on your opposition. But it wasn't really until we got him, when he signed with the Bears that, I kind of realized, I'm like, this guy's pretty admirable in his qualities where, he's, a really good leader. He's really well liked in the locker room. Obviously a physical bruising presence, again, that you dislike as an opponent, but love to have on your team. He's the kind of guy that if your smaller, younger, talented players are being picked on by somebody, which, has happened, Dylan McElrath steps in and suddenly everybody's kind of heading back to their benches type of thing, rather than scuffling or anything like that. So I can see why Coachella Valley fans would dislike him. I was there too at one point, but just remember that if he's on your team, the difference is there. And, I know I saw a funny clip of him last night where he was, he was talking to some unnamed Coachella Valley player off screen and was, basically trying to tell him that he was snapping his head back, trying to draw penalties and stuff, where he was looking at him and he was saying something, then going, and he's done that a few times during the playoffs, I think, too. So
to my coworkers who may be watching, when you heard me like laugh and then I went and shut my door, that was that thing that Jay was just talking about. When Cole Lind, at the same time, Hardy Hum and Octel got 2 for roughing. Cole Lind got 2 for diving embellishment. And McElrath was like trying to, like he just said, tell Cole Lind, we saw you dive. That's why you're in there. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Sometimes hockey players are funny. Not often, but sometimes. That was Winterton, not Cole Lind. Thank you to Ed for keeping us honest.
My apologies. I looked at the AHL website to double check, but my sincere apologies.
I think that's going to do it for us on this week's edition of Calder's Calling, a very special live episode. I've had a ton of fun, so hopefully everyone listening has had a ton of fun. If you want to check out our written coverage of the AHL, you can check us out online at thecaldertimes.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all at The Calder Times. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit subscribe on YouTube. Find your favorite podcatcher. We are both video and audio podcast. Leave us a like, leave us a comment, leave us a review. Don't forget to tell your friends where they can find all the AHL hockey chatter their hearts desire. We'd like to extend a final thank you to our sponsor, Document Doctors. Until next week, I've been Jay Foster. That's been Corey Swartz. That's been Deana Weinheimer. We have been Calder's Calling.